Good afternoon, everyone. James Singleton here, one of the RETCs here at Northspyre. I'm really excited to be here today and chat contracts with you all. Alrighty, we are just at about 4:03 here, folks, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much for joining today. My name is James Singleton. I am an RETC here at Northspyre. It's our kind of fancy word for Customer Success Manager. It does stand for Real Estate Transformation Consultant. Just a really quick little bit about my background. I've been in the real estate industry for about 13 years, actually. Started in the investment sales world and eventually kind of got into the development side of things. Most recently was working at RXR, their residential development team as a project manager. So really excited to be here at Northspyre. I think we all share the vision for the value that this software provides. And I'm really excited to be here today with you folks chatting about contracts. So without further ado, we'll hop in. I have a little short intro deck to just kind of go through the agenda and some things that we're going to chat about. So let's go ahead and hop in. So this slide is just to kind of, reiterate the fact that we as RATCs are here to provide value to support you all in all of your real estate projects. We have a super knowledgeable team of industry vets who are all awesome people. We do urge you guys, anytime you are reaching out to us, to loop in our concierge team. They are an amazing group of individuals who respond, within seconds most times. As you can see here, our average response time is about 5 minutes. And then, just to reiterate as well, we have up to 350 articles in our knowledge base, which is more or less, the master handbook to everything Northspyre, I should say. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here. So today, again, we're going to be chatting about contracts, the life cycle of contracts in Northspyre. We're going to look at adding those contracts into Northspyre and the various ways that you can do that. And then once those contracts are in Northspyre and accepted into your projects, looking at tracking invoices against those contracts. And then lastly, kind of contract management, visibility, being able to see where you currently stand in terms of a percentage complete on a specific contract, etc. This is some of our kind of recent and upcoming training sessions that we've had. Obviously today, the 20th of March, we're talking contracts here. We do have the recordings available for all of these pre or post trainings or trainings that have just happened. So if you have any interest in those, please reach out to myself or your respectable RATC. So just some other ones coming up in the next couple of weeks here. Please let us know if you'd like any more information regarding these. So some things, some takeaways that you guys should come from or should walk away with today, I should say, and why we manage contracts in Northspyre's, get better insight and control over your project, understand where those vendors are at any given time, faster and more informed decision-making, being able to see around that corner and understand that, oh, okay, I only have 10,000 left to bill on this architect contract, what have you, and improve just general vendor management. So lots of great stuff that we're going to chat about today. And then some key learning outcomes here and a more kind of itemized agenda here. So we're going to first kind of understand the steps to take to enter a contract into Northspyre. There are multiple different ways to do so via the data inbox, the anticipated cost report, and then lastly, that commitment and potential cost index. We're going to look at how to utilize Copilot Analytics and understand the impact of accepting those contracts into the project, both on the vendor level as well as on the budget level. We're going to look at separating contracts into various components and why one would do that and how to do that. We're going to take a look at pairing invoices when we're both accepting them into the project via the data inbox, as well as retroactively pairing those invoices to contracts and contract components. And lastly, we're going to look at kind of managing those contracts. Once we've done all of that stuff we just mentioned, how do I look at that data and manage that data and the different ways and portals that you can do so in Northspyre? Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop in. I urge you all to kind of log into Northspyre and follow along if you can. I think that would make things more valuable, et cetera, and prompt some questions, et cetera. Alrighty, so I have now opened up my Northspyre account here. And for purposes of this webinar today, I'm actually going to be using a kind of sample project that we've put together for training purposes and demo purposes. Just has a lot more data and that kind of thing to be able to display what I'm looking to display. So when you first click into your project, this is the screen that Northspyre will bring you to here. This is your project dashboard, more or less your command center, 30,000 square foot view of the project, if you will. So you have, all of your kind of summary figures categorized here, your total budget, total committed, balance remaining, all that good stuff, a snapshot of your cash flow, kind of, again, all of your kind of high level figures on the project. So that's where you first come in. To navigate, I'm first going to start in our data inbox and talk about the process of uploading a contract into Northspyre. So once you get that contract inked by all parties and it's fully executed, you're ready to get it uploaded into Northspyre. The first method that I would highly recommend utilizing is going to be using that data inbox. So if I come up here to my top toolbar and go to data inbox and click on that, I will come to my data inbox here. And as you can see, I have these 5 separate inboxes within this feature. My invoice data inbox, my contract data inbox, et cetera, et cetera. We have one for COIs, one for lien waivers, and one for general documents as well. So let's go ahead and check out the contracts data inbox here. And the process is pretty straightforward here. So this is one of Northspyre's elements that I like to call kind of its secret sauce, if you will. You have the ability to send in an email via email an executed contract as an attachment into this inbox. Our backend AI technology will extract all of the relevant details from that contract, and you will simply be able to come in here, approve and review those contract details, and either edit those details and separate that contract into various components, or just go ahead and accept that contract into the project. So to start, I want to cover just quickly over here on the top right of your screen in your inbox, this little pinwheel here. If I click on that, I get the email address associated with this inbox. So for this specific inbox, which is my contracts data inbox, the email address is this 100 West Highland Commons at contracts.northspyre.com. I do have the ability to copy this email address right to my clipboard by clicking on this little double box icon here, and then I can go ahead and paste it wherever I need. So you can provide this email address to your vendors. For contracts, it's likely going to be that you're going to be receiving those, executing them, et cetera. And a member of the development team or accounting team will send those into this contracts data inbox. So once that gets sent in, you will see, I'm going to use this first test contract here as an example, but it will look similar to this situation here. You'll see a subject of the email, the vendor associated with it, and an amount and pending approval. So I'm going to click into this. And when I do so, I get a little nice preview of my contract here on the left, as well as all of the base contract details that have already been extracted from the document. So this is a really nice example here. I have, a nice architect contract here, and I can scroll through the document to see, my fees in terms of payment is obviously where I'm looking to be at. So I can see here that, yes, the total contract value is that $90,000. However, there are, it looks to me like 4 different components of this contract. So what I think is the proper way to handle this contract is to split this contract into various components so that I have the ability to invoice towards those specific components. And when I say components, what I'm saying is I'm going to kind of divvy this contract up into $18,000 for SD schematic design, $18,000 for design development, et cetera, et cetera. So really quick, what I'm going to kind of show you guys the process to do that. So once I'm in my contract here, if I scroll down a bit to my contract components, I can see I currently have only one component for that full $90,000. First thing I'm going to do is edit this component to be my first component. So this will be that $18,000 for my SD phase. What I'm going to do is enter a description here and make it nice and clear that that is the SD phase. I do have the option to enter various dates and some other information in tuning a cause. That cause comes into play really when you're talking about a change order, which I'll get to in a second. So I enter all that various information there. I save that component. This will update in just a second. So now you can see I have that first component, my SD phase, 18,000. I now want to enter an additional component for that second 18,000 for the DD phase. So I do so by just adding a component there, giving it a description here, and I'm good to go. So I add that component, and as you can see in a second, that will populate there. And so you'd repeat that same process for the additional two components there. So CDs, construction documents, looks like 36,000. And then lastly is just my retainer of that 18,000. So once I have set all my four components there, I would be satisfied with everything, and I would just go ahead and accept the contract into the project. To do so, I'd go over to my approval workflow tab, and I would approve it there. However, before doing so, I would notice that I do have this number 1 in red next to Copilot Analytics. Anytime you see anything in red or a number in Northspyre, it's a good idea to click on it and see what's going on there. So on this Copilot Analytics, what this is doing is showing you what is the effect of accepting this contract into the project going to be. So it's going to look both at the budget impact as well as the vendor impact on the project. So on this particular example here, it is flagging that if I do accept this contract in, this commitment for $36,000, I'm actually going to be over budget for my architect of record line item. So as you can see here right now, I have 627,000 and change for that budget line, and I have over 857,000 of total commitments. So even before accepting this contract in, I was a bit over on this budget line. Now, this does not prohibit you from accepting this contract into the project. It is just a FYI, a flag saying, hey, just letting you know, you are overcommitted on this budget line. You also do have the optionality to do a reallocation right from this screen, and basically before you enter this contract in, you can reallocate funds from another budget line or a contingency line item. That can be done just by clicking on this button here, and you can select where you want to grab those funds from and exactly how much you want to do. Similar kind of thing on the vendor impact here. This is looking at the vendor level. So it looks like this JCER Design Consultants vendor previous to this contract actually didn't have any commitments. So it's not giving me any flag here. It's saying, okay, you're committing this 36,000. That's okay. Again, despite the fact that I have this flag here on the budget level, I'm still able to accept this contract into the project. Okay. That is more or less accepting a contract through the data inbox. I do want to disclose before moving on that this is the place, this contracts data inbox is where you would also be sending in anything contract related. So a change order, a potential change order, which we dub in Northspyre as an exposure, those can also be sent through this contracts data inbox. An example of that would be right here. This is a change order, an ad service that was sent in. So as you can see, this was picked up as a change order. I can see that if I edit the details here, I can see that this was selected as a change order. If I disagree with that, or I want to treat this as a base contract or even a potential change order, I do have the ability to edit that. I can save those details if I'm satisfied there. Again, similarly with your contracts, you do have the ability to separate these change orders into different various components. Those various components can hit different budget lines, and there's a lot of different things you can do with those components there. Okay. So that is more or less the data inbox and sending contracts and change orders through there. I want to next move out of the data inbox and look at the anticipated cost report quickly. So this is another place where we have the ability to enter change orders, contracts, exposures, etc. Doing so through this feature or this portion of Northspyre It will not prompt that contract to go through an approval workflow. That is, if you have an approval workflow set up for contracts specifically, just to refresh everybody, we have the ability to set up those workflows for invoices, contracts, as well as documents. If you have those approval workflows in place, just keep in mind, if you're entering contracts via the ACR or via any of the indexes, it will not go through that workflow. It will be more or less a forced entry into the project. So going back to contracts here, in order to enter a base contract through your ACR, you can scroll down to whatever budget line you are looking to enter that contract for. So say I wanted to enter a contract for my, let's see here. Let's say for my municipal fees and work permits for whatever reason. I can come in here to my base contracts column. And generally, as a rule in Northspyre, any blue figure is going to be clickable. So I can click into this 0 here in my base contract column, and I can simply come over here and add new. From here, I can give that contract a title, select a vendor, and then enter all of those various components as I see fit. Same kind of thing here with change orders. I can also enter those change orders right here from my ACR. I can add that new, give it a title, vendor, enter all my various selections. I also have the ability on a change order to select a cause. That is not a necessary or required field, but it is nice. If you do select these, you will be able to add that kind of column later on in your various indexes. Okay, moving on, the third way to enter a contract into Northspyre is going to be through your commitment and potential cost index. So to navigate to there, I go up to my top toolbar and go to Power Tools and my commitment and potential costs under the data indexes there. From here, so this is where I'm going to be coming to see all commitments, exposures, change orders, contracts, everything regarding contracts, basically, that has been accepted into the project. So everything, that is fully gone through the approval workflow or been entered through the ACR or this portion will be viewable here. I have 3 tabs up top here. If I'm currently, selected on the All tab, I have the ability to filter. So I can come in here and go to Type and select, whether I want to just look at base contracts or just look at estimates or proposals. Again, these are our 2 types of exposures in Northspyre, the estimate and proposal. So I can, filter and say, just look at my contracts there. If I want to enter a new contract from this portion here, I would come over to my Commitments tab and go over to Add Commitment. This is going to give me the ability to enter either a base contract or a change order from here. I enter all my various details, my vendor, requisition period, title, and then give my various components like we do on all of our other entries here. I do have the ability here to attach a backup file. So if I check this box, when I go ahead and save those changes and I have all my required fields enter, it will prompt me to drop in a file for this contract. Okay, great. So those are more or less the 3 different ways that you can enter a contract into Northspyre. We've also talked through the Copilot Analytics. So next we're going to look at pairing invoices to contracts. And so what I mean by that is when we have an invoice come into the data inbox and say, my architect contract has been signed and executed and I got it into Northspyre a month ago. I now have my first invoice from said architect. And I want to track this specific invoice towards that contract, or even more specifically, towards a component of that contract. So like we were talking about before, separating that architect contract into those components, the SD phase, DD phase, CD phase, I would have the ability, and I do have the ability, to assign a specific invoice to that, say, DD phase for that contract. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to my data inbox here. And I'm going to walk through first the process of assigning an invoice to a contract through the data inbox. So I'm in my invoice data inbox here. And remember, the email address is always accessible via this little pinwheel here. You can come in and always copy it to your clipboard. So once I'm in that invoice data index here, I'm going to click on this first invoice here that is for the geo survey. And I am going to So looks like this invoice is for $1,950. Everything looks good to me. All the information matches up. But now I want to make sure that this invoice is tied to that geotechnical or geosurvey contract. So in order to do that, I can come over here to these little three dots and click Edit. And from here, I can scroll down to the bottom to this advanced portion here. If I click on that, I'm going to get some additional selections that are become available. And one of those is pair to contract. So from here, I can select on that dropdown. And since I have currently the GeoSurvey Limit Ltd vendor selected, it's going to only show me the contracts associated with that specific vendor. So this is my one contract for this vendor. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And from there, I'm good to go. I go ahead and save the component. And now that invoice, once I accept it in, will be invoiced towards that specific contract. And consequently, I'll be able to later on then, when I'm looking at this invoice, I can go to my data index, my invoice data index. And from here, I'll have the ability to toggle on a column where I can see the associated contract with that specific invoice. Unfortunately, it looks like we don't have a ton of data here that have associated contracts, but you would see that contract right here. And that's how you'd kind of be able to track the progress, or one of the ways you can track the progress of billing to that specific vendor. Another way that you can do exactly just that is through your project vendor overview. So if you go over here to my top toolbar and go to Power Tools and come down to my project vendor overview, this is a way that you can do like a serious deep dive into a specific vendor and get an idea of all of their base contracts, all of their exposures, all of their change orders, and all of their invoices that have ever been accepted into the project. So this is another great way, once you have started pairing those invoices to specific contracts, to come here and be able to see, okay, what % complete is this vendor on the job currently? And I can, see everything in one place. I can, take a look at all of my invoices. I can add those columns to see the associated contract. Lots of different things I can do right from this vendor management page. This is a second place that I can come once I've gotten all my invoices and contracts tied, that I can come to see that specific data. The last place that I can come to see that specific data, we've already been, but we're going to go back, is that commitment and potential cost index. So again, from here, I can filter to see a specific vendor if I like. I can search to see a specific vendor, and I can see where I'm at in terms of the tracking for those specific contracts, etc. Okay, that is a lot of talking on my part, but that was more or less the life cycle of a contract in Northspyre. Keep in mind, there's a lot of different ways to manage those contracts, enter those contracts. I would keep the kind of best way forward in terms of managing those contracts. I would advise send them through the data inbox. Have our team, extract that data, and our backend extract that data for you. Minimize the data entry. Utilize these tools to really be able to maximize your visibility into the project. I'm going to go ahead and pause there. Come back to my project dashboard here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. I know that was a lot of information, so please let me know if you have any and all questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Let's see, here we go. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions just yet. But we'll certainly give it a couple more minutes if anyone wants to chime in. We are doing questions via the Q&A chat feature in Zoom. So I'm sure everyone, or I'd imagine everyone have access to that. Okay, Victoria, great. What if the invoice is a different amount from the proposal, like they add a shipping charge or something? So what if the invoice is a different amount from the proposal? Okay. Yeah, Victoria, I think that would be absolutely fine. I think what you mean is, say we have a contract for $10,000. We, contract gets fully executed. We send it into the inbox. It gets accepted into the project. And then a few days later, maybe we get an invoice for $2,000. That's no problem. We would basically assign that invoice to that contract as we walked through in the data inbox. And we'd be able to see consequently that that vendor and that contract is, at that current moment, 20% billed. So I think that's where you were going with your question, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Does anyone else have any other questions before we get ready to wrap up? If anyone, thinks of any questions later on today, that's no problem whatsoever. You can always contact your real estate transformation consultant, our concierge team, myself. We're all here to be a resource and provide as much value as possible. Great, Victoria. Example: proposal is 10,000. Invoice comes in at 10,500 because they need a special shipping adjustment. Okay, that is absolutely fine. Couple different things there. So what would happen, if I had that $10,000 contract accepted into the project, full invoice comes in for 10,500, I would get a flag in my Copilot Analytics that if I accepted that invoice into the project, that I would be overcommitted or over budget really for that specific commitment, but I would still be able to accept it in. Simultaneously, when accepting it in, I can do a transfer, a reallocation of budget. What you could also do is you could treat that extra $500 as a change order. So you could ask the vendor to send that extra 500 separately, treat that as a change order, and that way you'd be able to track the billing against the change order. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of handle that, Victoria. I think the best way or the cleanest way would just to be basically to accept that invoice in, despite the fact that you would be overcommitted, and just do a reallocation of budget if needed. If you're okay with having the variance, maybe till the end of the project, that's also okay. That doesn't prohibit you from operating and managing the project. Hoping that answers your question, Victoria. Any other questions, folks? Oh, perfect, Victoria. Glad to hear it. Okay, everyone. Sounds like we don't have any. Well, let's give it another 30 seconds, actually, to see if anyone has any other questions. It was really great to be with you all today. I enjoyed it. And I have one last quick slide I want to share with everyone. Obviously, I know everyone is quite busy. Market's picking back up. Things are starting to cook, which is awesome. If you have the capacity, there's a couple quick little post-session homework items that I put together here for y'all. If you have the capacity and the time, or even maybe the next time that you guys have an executed contract that you want to get into Northspyre, I would recommend, trying the different ways of doing it. Upload it to the data inbox, maybe give it a try via the ACR and subsequently delete it if you're going with the inbox. But play around with these different features and these abilities. I think it's really important to get into the tool and click around and figure out where you have questions or uncertainties. And obviously then, reach out to us with those questions, please. Secondly, try to edit and assign an invoice that has already been accepted into the project and assign that to a contract and kind of experience that process. And lastly, get into those features in terms of the vendor overview page, the commitment and potential cost index, and see, really the value of all of this data once you have that tracking in and everything is really humming, to be able to have that super, super accurate data and the value that'll ultimately provide for everyone. So that is more or less it for today, everyone. Thank you so, so much for joining me. This was a great experience. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your RETC. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.